broadcaster. And earlier, my colleague Scott Laurie spoke to Pamela Wallin, Canadian Consul General, of course, celebrated Canadian broadcaster, about Mr. Jennings' passing. Let's listen to that.
Canadian-born journalist Peter Jennings died in his New York home Sunday night. ABC News President David Weston made the announcement. Since 1983, Jennings was the anchor of ABC News, and last April 5th, he announced to viewers in a taped segment that he was diagnosed with lung cancer. The longtime smoker has been off work ever since. And joining us on the line from Wadena, Saskatchewan, is Pamela Wallin. Pamela, I imagine that in your dealings in New York that you have had a chance to cross paths with Peter Jennings.
Yes, I knew Peter for many years, and when I moved to New York, he was a very, very generous friend, making sure that I met people and keeping in contact, and we talked quite regularly. He maintained his interest in Canadian politics, right to the very end. He was always interested in what was going on at home, and I think made a great effort to make sure that Americans understood some of the issues between the two countries, because I think he brought an understanding to the table. He was an incredible journalist, but he was also a very elegant and kind gentleman, and I really loved that about him. That he would come to dinner at the residence with people, and there was never any ego at that time. He asked his questions, he participated. I had dinners with him and for him. And he's a very elegant man.
This is somebody who every night spoke to roughly 9 to 11 million people every night. How is this news going to be received in the United States?
Well, it's part of a huge change that we've seen with the departure now under very different circumstances of all three of the major network anchors. And I think it is going to change the face of television, not only literally, but, you know, it's a sea change that we're seeing in journalism. And I think we're going to miss Peter Jennings particularly. He was a guy who always did his homework. A story never went to air that Peter didn't know the details of. He had a real intuitive sense of what people's interests were and how they would react. Watching him at 9/11, particularly, he so understood the American psyche and the American psychology, and perhaps it was in part because he was an outsider that he was able to peer in and see that so clearly and translate it back. I think he's going to be sorely missed. He was the person to whom people turned when his adopted country, when America was in crisis. Peter was a place that they turned. He had a very special feel for it. So I think the world of news journalism is going to change.
As somebody who held on so dearly to his Canadian identity, how would he react when he would be called, as he was, America's anchorman?
Well, I think he took that with a bit of a sense of humor. He loved his adopted country. There was no question. He found the politics and the people fascinating, and I think that's why he eventually took out American citizenship. He wanted to participate. He wanted to be part of the country that had helped create him in that journalistic sense, but he was always a Canadian. He traveled back to Canada every year. His sister Sarah lives in Ottawa. They always spent time together in the summer. She visited regularly. He was, and as I say, we talked, and I know he talked with other people all of the time about the issues at home. He had an incredible feel for his home country, too, even though he'd been traveling around the world for many years. And I think the two sides of Peter Jennings, being Canadian-born, having traveled the world, but also being America's anchor, it really gave him the perspective and the sense of context that I think made him a cut above.
All right, on the line from Wadena, Saskatchewan, and Canadian Consul General in New York City, Pamela Wallin. Pam, thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
CTV Scott Laurie speaking to Canadian Consul General and former broadcaster Pamela Wallin following the announcement of the death of veteran broadcaster Peter Jennings. He died succumbed to lung cancer at the age of 67. He'll be missed. We'll be back after this break.
Each day you're in a fight with your feet, and now they're revolting. Fight back with new Gold Bond Foot Cream.